Welcome to the David Pakman Show. I am, of course, obviously not David Pakman. I am Farron Cousins, host of Ring of Fire and Farron Balanced, and I will be filling in for David Pakman today. And boy, do we have a fun one for you today, folks. We've got Donald Trump and his many nonsensical rantings at his Flint, Michigan rally this week. We have Mitch McConnell calling Republicans stupid, which might be the first time I've ever agreed with Mitch McConnell. And we have Marjorie Taylor Greene absolutely losing it over a sheriff at a hearing this week telling Republicans that, hey, your policy's a little bit racist. She didn't like that one bit. All of that and so much more is coming up on today's show. So without further ado, let's get into it. Donald Trump traveled to Flint, Michigan this week for a rally / Q&A town hall type thing that was very light on the Q's and very confusing on the A's. Because Donald Trump actually only took like a couple questions from what was supposed to be a town hall event. And for his sake, that's probably the best idea ever because he's not good at answering questions. I mean, he's not good at speaking at all, but when it comes to actually answering questions off the cuff, man, is this guy bad. And if you don't believe me, then consider this. At one point, Donald Trump was asked a question. Woman stands up, asks him, well, first she goes into her backstory a little bit. She's working, she's struggling, groceries are expensive. So her question, of course, comes down to, what would you as president do to lower my grocery bills? It's a simple question. It's a question that, by the way, is on the minds of millions of voters across this country. So they want answers. And unfortunately, if you want answers to this, you shouldn't go to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, for weeks now, has been told by his advisors, his allies, his friends, Republican media, they're all saying the same thing. Stick to policy. Get away from personal attacks. Well, this is what happens when Donald Trump is asked about specific policies. Take a look.
Mom of 3, a grandmother of 7, and 3 great-grands, a registered nurse, retired nurse. So I know the cost that goes into raising children and running a household.
Yeah. People
just can't survive now. How are you going to bring down the cost of food and groceries?
Good. Very good. Thank you. So we have to start always with energy. Always. I don't want to be boring about it, but there's no bigger subject. It covers everything. If you make donuts, if you make cars, whatever you make, energy is a big deal. And we're going to get that. It's my ambition to get your energy bill within 12 months down 50%. If I can do that, we've done a hell of a job. 5-0, not 15, 50. Interest rates are going to follow, and actually they're going to follow for another reason. The economy is now not good. And interest rates, you'll see they'll do the rate cut and all the political stuff tomorrow, I think. And, will he do a half a point? Will he do a quarter of a point? But the reason is because the economy is not good. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, so right off the bat, just off to a horrible start. Right? What are you going to do to lower grocery bills? Well, you can't talk about grocery bills without talking about energy. Actually, you can, okay? You really can. You do not have to go off on this weird tangent about energy. The United States is not currently experiencing any kind of energy shortage. I don't know if Donald Trump is aware of that, but he is trying to give that woman who asked the question the impression that somehow we're running out of energy. We just can't do it. And that's why the energy prices in this country are so high, which is completely false, by the way. Domestic energy production here in the United States is near record highs. It is certainly higher than it was during the Trump administration. We have energy to give to people. Energy is not the reason that your grocery bill is so high. The reason that energy bills are higher, the reason that grocery bills are higher, all come down to one thing: greedflation. The CEO of Kroger, massive grocery store chain across the United States, recently told the FTC that, they've raised prices on certain items that they carry, specifically, by the way, eggs and milk, two of the most basic staples of grocery stores. The CEO admitted that we raised the prices of those things higher than the level of inflation. Why? Well, the answer is very simple. Because they can. Because nobody is stopping them from doing it. What are people going to do? Just not buy food? And it's the same thing with energy costs. Energy costs in the United States have gone up not because there's a shortage of energy, not because it's more expensive to get it to you, but because the people that run those companies say, we can. What are people going to do? Not put gas in their car? Are they just not going to have gas in their homes for cooking or heating or however you use it? No, they're not. And the few people that cannot afford these increased prices, the CEOs know this, the money they lose from people not paying their bills is going to be more than made up for by the people who do pay the higher costs. So it is a net positive for them, and they do it because they can. It doesn't matter if it's pharmaceuticals, groceries, gas, whatever. They charge you more money because there's no one to stop them. We do not have federal price controls in place for these kinds of things, leaving these companies free to do whatever they want. And of course, energy prices, when we're talking about oil, those are set on the global scale anyway. So, we're at the whim of these other countries. So Donald Trump is talking about a thing that's not even related to anything close to what that woman asked. But don't worry, because that's not all he said in his response. He did, unfortunately, continue, and here's the second half of his response to this woman asking again, just to remind you, how would you lower my grocery bills? Here's the second part.
But we're going to get interest rates down, and we got to work with our farmers. Our farmers are being decimated right now. They're being absolutely decimated. And one of the reasons is we allow a lot of farm product into our country, and we're going to have to be a little bit like other countries. We're not going to allow so much we're going to let our farmers go to work. And I don't know if you remember, I love the farmers because, I had many meetings as president. I have this gorgeous room with this beautiful table that seats about 35 people. And I was with the farmers. Usually everybody wants something. They all want subsidy. But I was with the farmers, and I think you might have been there, actually, Sarah. I said, look, fellas, we're going to get you such a beautiful subsidy, meaning I'm going to do things. And one of the people raises and, sir, honestly, we don't want a subsidy. This is the first time this ever happened to me. Everyone they want money. They want to build windmills. We want money with these windmills. Anyway. But you know what? It was amazing. He said, almost tears in his eyes, they were getting decimated. We don't want a subsidy. We just want a...
So tariffs on any agricultural goods coming into the United States will somehow, he says, I guess lower your grocery costs. I don't even think he remembers what the original question was. And for the record, that conversation he's talking about, the farmers, they were begging me, please, no more subsidies. No, we have so many, we don't even want any. That's bull. I hope everybody remembers that in 2019, and then once again in the run-up to the 2020 election, just to shore up their support, Donald Trump started sending checks out to American farmers. And he did that because the bankruptcy rate for American farmers under Donald Trump, due to his trade wars, bankruptcy rate for farmers rose to 24%. Farmers were going bankrupt at a rate not seen in this country since the Dust Bowl. And it was because of his policy choices. Because as a result of the tariffs on the goods coming in from China that Donald Trump put in place, China said, okay, we're going to stop buying your agricultural goods. So the exports that these farmers typically had, that they would be selling overseas to China, because, we bring goods in from China, but guess what? They buy stuff from us. And suddenly these farmers couldn't sell their goods. So Donald Trump had the federal government start cutting these people checks. And here is what he said about it at the time. I sometimes see where these horrible, dishonest reporters will say that, oh, geez, the farmers are upset. Well, they can be too upset, or they can't be too upset, because I gave them $12 billion, and I gave them $16 billion this year. I hope you like me even better than you did in 16. So he's literally admitting, like, hey, I gave you money, you gotta like me. Because his disastrous trade policies were sending these farmers into bankruptcy. And, of course, raising the cost of the goods we buy at the grocery store. And so Donald Trump's, I guess, roundabout answer to this woman of how he's going to lower grocery prices is to do the very thing he did that helped cause grocery prices go through the roof to begin with. This is why Trump doesn't talk policy. And this is why it has driven me absolutely up the wall every single time those, right-wingers come out and beg him, please just talk about policy. Have you never heard him talk about policy? Because he's even worse talking about policy than he is when he's doing the personal attacks. At least his personal attacks can get, a rise out of his base. When he talks about policy, all he does is confuse everybody, leaving nobody knowing what exactly he just said. At no point in that response was there anything close to an answer to the question that woman asked. And I hope she takes that to heart. I hope she understands that she has a very real issue, and Donald Trump clearly doesn't even understand it. But if you think that is the only weird, incoherent rant Donald Trump went on during that rally, you are kidding yourselves. Also, during that Flint, Michigan rally, Donald Trump went on a rant about how he doesn't go on rants. This man is now at the point of having to incoherently ramble about how he doesn't incoherently ramble. Here is how Donald Trump described it to that crowd in Flint, Michigan this week, and I'm sure it left each and every one of them even more confused than his grocery bill answer. Here's what he said, and bear with me because I'm going to read the whole thing. So I give these long, sometimes very complex sentences and paragraphs, but they all come together. I do it a lot. I do it with Raising Cain, that story. I do it with the story on the catapults on the aircraft carriers. I do it with a lot of different stories. When I mention Dr. Hannibal Lecter, I'm using that as an example of people that are coming in from Silence of the Lambs. I use it. They say, it's terrible. So they say, so I'll give this long, complex area, for instance, that I talked about a lot of a different territory. The bottom line is I said the most important thing. We're going to bring more plants into your state and this country to make automobiles. We're going to be bigger than before, but the fake news, and there's a lot of them back there, for a town hall. There's a lot of people, but the fake news likes to say, oh, he was rambling. No, that's not rambling. That's genius when you can connect the dots. I like how he puts that caveat in there. Like, it's totally genius if you can connect the dots. Well, you haven't, but he's not done. Now, Sarah, referring to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was on stage with him for some reason. Now, Sarah, if you couldn't connect the dots, you got a problem. But every dot was connected and many stories were told in that little paragraph. But there is something. But they say that the other thing I say is this: we had 107,000 people show up in New Jersey. We had 68,000 people show up in Alabama. We had 79 or 81,000 in South Carolina. And they've never said I'm a great speaker. And I said, am I a great speaker? They say, oh no, he rambles. What the hell are all you people showing up for if I ramble? You don't want to show up for a rambler. We're at the point where he is rambling incoherently about how he totally doesn't ramble incoherently. And the reason I wanted to read those words to you instead of show you the clip was so that you could really get a sense of it. Right? It's one thing to see it in a clip, but when you have somebody else have to read these words to you in a normal voice, it makes even less sense than when he does it. Like, he's going through all these different areas in this rant about how he totally doesn't rant, claiming he connects the dots. There's dots that weren't connected in here. And then he blames the people. He's like, if you can't connect the dots, then you've got a problem. No, it's not our job to connect your thought dots. That's on you. If you leave people feeling confused, if you're leaving people thinking, holy crap, that was bad, that's not because they didn't connect the dots. It's because everything you say and do is very confusing because none of it makes any sense. I have repeatedly said on my shows that we shouldn't look at these as ramblings. We shouldn't look at them as rants. We shouldn't look at his posts on Truth Social as, unhinged tirades even. We should look at these as symptoms. Symptoms of mental problems. Because that is what I firmly believe that these are. So he can ramble about how he doesn't ramble, but in my eyes, these look like symptoms that probably need to be checked out by a medical professional. We're going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back with more of The David Pakman Show.
Don't forget that the best way to support The David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com.
We're back on The David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins sitting in for David today. And if you happen to enjoy what you see from me, I do encourage you, please go subscribe to both of my YouTube channels, youtube.com/The Ring of Fire and youtube.com/Farron Balanced. You can also find me across social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, or Facebook at Farron Balanced. Now, let's get back into some of the really weird things that happened during Donald Trump's rally/town hall in Flint, Michigan. During that rally in Flint this week, Donald Trump decided to address an issue that I guess had been festering with him for a full week, and it is, of course, when Kamala Harris said at last week's presidential debate that people were leaving his rallies early. And even though his rally in Flint took place, again, a full week after she made those comments, it was still living in his head rent-free. So Donald Trump decided to take a moment and address the fact of, people leave his rallies early by not only claiming that people totally don't do that, but if they did, he would just call it a day and leave himself, right? Here's what he told the crowd. I don't think I've ever said this before, so we do these rallies. They're massive rallies. Everybody loves, everybody stays to the end. By the way, when she said that, well, your rallies people leave. Honestly, nobody does. And if I saw them leaving, I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, make America great again, and I'd get the hell out, okay? So that is how Donald Trump addressed the issue of people leaving his rallies early. And I'm pretty sure that was kind of meant as a warning to all of the people that were at that particular rally, like, hey, if you guys leave, I'm out the door too. Okay, I'm not going to be the last one sitting here to turn the lights off. If you leave, I'm out. So, if you want to go, I'll go. Weird. What's even weirder is that this, of course, has been living in his head for a week. And to make matters worse for Donald Trump on the issue of people leaving his rallies, Joe Rogan dropped his new podcast for the week on Monday. And this was the first time that Joe Rogan had addressed what happened at last week's debate. And Joe Rogan is definitely not a, left of center Kamala Harris supporter. But during his podcast, Rogan did take a moment to praise Harris for basically beating the living tar out of Donald Trump, specifically on the rally issue. Here is what Rogan said. Amazing job. She's nailing it. Then, he talks specifically about her baiting Trump into talking about the crowd sizes. Oh my God, this is jujitsu, where she's like, if you go to his rallies, his crowds are boring. And then he mocked Donald Trump saying, my crowds are the best crowds. I have the number one crowds. He couldn't help himself, Rogan said. Now, I don't think that this means that Joe Rogan is coming over to the left and he's going to endorse Kamala Harris for president, but he's kind of been, a bit of an ally to Donald Trump, I guess we could call it. And for him to go out there and openly mock Donald Trump for falling for that bait, right? She set the trap in front of him, basically said, here is a trap. What are you going to do? And Donald Trump said, well, I'm going to get in the trap. It's a nice trap. You did a good job. I'm going to get right in it. But I'm not just going to get in it tonight. I am going to live in this trap, and I am going to continue ranting and raving like a crazy person because it got under my skin so badly. It hurt my little feelings to the point where I can't think of anything else, so that I have to address it with a new crowd a week later. It's no secret that people are leaving Donald Trump's rallies early. I mean, if you've spent any time on social media over the last 2 years, we have seen the clips, we have seen the footage. Not only have we seen people filing out the doors as early as 15 minutes into Donald Trump beginning to speak, but we also see all the empty chairs. Even when people are not filing out, he's not able to fill the arenas. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still getting thousands of people, he's getting massive crowds. But it's nowhere near like what he used to pull in. And I do think that part of the reason for that is because he's not attracting any new people. It's the same old that have always gone to his rallies, the people who have always supported him, because they like the greatest hits. You know, they want to hear the 2020 election was stolen. They want to hear build the wall. Hell, throw in lock her up as an encore, right? The people leaving, I think, are the potentially new people, right? Like, hey, yeah, we love the greatest hits, but we've heard them a lot. We want to hear the new material, like, how are you going to lower grocery bills? And he doesn't play those hits. No, because they don't exist. So those people get fed up. Okay, we're hearing election lies. We're hearing about a wall that's already crumbling to dust over most parts in the Southwest. We don't care. Give us something new. Give us something exciting. And Trump himself has been bringing exceptionally low energy to most of his performances recently. So people don't want to be there. And you can't really blame them at this point. Donald Trump did this to himself by having no new material. Nobody wants to go and see Jim Gaffigan make the Hot Pockets joke at every stop along a tour when he's promoting a new comedy special. We get it. It was funny back then, but we've heard it 100 times. We don't need to hear it again. But that's what Trump is. He is a comedian with just 3 jokes that he tells over and over and over again. But when he's not telling the same stories a million times in a row, he's also getting very confused about things like geography. Also, during his performance in Flint, Michigan this week, Donald Trump appeared to confuse the United States state of Alaska with the country of Afghanistan. Because, you know, I mean, that's a common mistake most people make. Like, oh, is this a picture of Afghanistan? Oh, no, it's Alaska. They're so similar, I can't tell the two apart. But here's what happened. While Donald Trump was boasting about how great he was for the military, he decided to talk about the base that was built in Bagram. Bagram, of course, is in Afghanistan. But here's what Trump said. We have Bagram in Alaska. They said it might be bigger than Saudi Arabia. I got it approved. So you're confusing Bagram with Alaska, you know, Afghanistan with Alaska. You're also now suggesting that Alaska might be bigger than Saudi Arabia. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, there's another possibility here, pointed out by the Daily Beast Justin Baragona, where he says, the thing is, you can't even give him the benefit of the doubt that he was just confused two things that sound a bit alike. Anwar, Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and Bagram aren't similar phonetically at all. So he is suggesting that maybe Trump wasn't trying to talk about the airbase, Bagram, but instead talking about Anwar in Alaska that may have bigger oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, which of course isn't true. But maybe he was confusing Alaska for Afghanistan, and maybe thinks Afghanistan, you know, is just a larger place than Saudi Arabia. We don't know. If I sound confused, it's because this is a very confusing and crazy thing to say, because there's no way to make sense of it, because even if he hadn't misspoken, it still doesn't make sense. Here's what folks on social media had to say. Tom Nichols with The Atlantic said this: "They say it might be bigger than Saudi Arabia. They also say it's in Afghanistan, not Alaska." Neera Tanden, director of the U.S. Domestic Policy Council, said, quote, "Just wondering, all those decoding VP Harris's every syllable are going to give us their analysis of this." Which, of course, is a good point to make, right? Everything Kamala Harris says, hell, everything Joe Biden says gets put under the microscope like they misspoke, they're obviously dumb as hell, they're senile, they're crazy, they've got dementia. What about this? This man doesn't know basic things. He doesn't know geography. He can't tell the difference between a state in our union or Afghanistan. I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like that's the thing that may warrant a couple of headlines from the New York Times or Washington Post, or hell, maybe even just Politico. But no, don't worry about it. Trump's crazy. He doesn't know his own country, but that's no big deal. That's just Trump being Trump, right? Because that's how the media reacts every time this man gets something wrong. If President Biden had said something like this, it would be wall-to-wall coverage on every outlet for the next week. Trump did it, and it's not even a blip on the media's radar. Switching gears a little bit, getting away from Donald Trump in Flint, Michigan, finally, we have another very serious issue that we got to talk about this week, folks, and that is, of course, the looming government shutdown. Now, Republicans in the House put forth their resolution, their budget, really, that also contained the SAVE Act as an amendment to it. So the SAVE Act, for those who are not familiar, is, of course, the legislation that Donald Trump has been pushing that makes illegal that which is already illegal, because it makes it a crime for non-citizens to vote in federal U.S. elections, which, again, is already a crime. We don't need that. But what it also does is it gives Republicans more leeway to kick people off voting rolls in their states if they have a foreign-sounding name, and it forces people to bring documentation that they were born in the United States when they register to vote, which could include a birth certificate or a passport. Something that a lot of people either don't have a passport, or if you're like me, you really have no idea where your birth certificate is, and I understand that that's probably a problem, but it's the sad reality for a lot of us. But we don't need the SAVE Act, and it is, of course, a way for Republicans to further keep people from voting. It's already illegal for people that are not citizens to vote in federal elections. Nevertheless, Republicans have tied the budget bill for this year, or for next year, I should say, to that legislation. And it's not going to pass. The Senate has already said, we're not going to pass it. Biden has already said, I'm not going to sign it. So Republicans are doing this because Trump is making them do it, which is, again, pushing us closer and closer to the verge of a government shutdown. And this is now, by my count, the 7th time in this Republican-controlled House of Representatives that they have pushed us to the brink of a shutdown or fiscal cliff. 7 times, folks. Mitch McConnell has had it. Mitch McConnell is furious at his own Republican Party, and he lashed out at them, saying this on Wednesday morning. "One thing you cannot have is a government shutdown. It would be politically beyond stupid for us to do that right before the election, because certainly we'd get the blame. One of my favorite old sayings is, there's no education in the second kick of a mule. We've been here before. I'm for whatever avoids a government shutdown, and that'll ultimately end up, obviously, being a discussion between the Democratic leader and the Speaker of the House." So you're saying that your Republican counterparts in the House are being politically stupid, which I agree with. And for the first time ever, I'm agreeing with Mitch McConnell. It would be politically stupid for Republicans to shut down the government, 6 weeks before an election. yeah, you're going to get blamed for that. And you're going to pay the price for it when people go and vote. So Mitch McConnell is out there saying Republicans are stupid. But Donald Trump, a little bit later yesterday, told Republicans to be smart. Here's what Trump put on Truth Social. If Republicans don't get the SAVE Act and every ounce of it, they should not agree to a continuing resolution in any way, shape, or form. Democrats are registering illegal voters by the tens of thousands as we speak. Only American citizens should be voting in our most important election in history, or any election. A vote must happen before the election, not after the election when it is too late. Be smart, Republicans. You've been pushed around long enough by the Democrats. Don't let it happen again. So Mitch McConnell is saying, you guys are stupid. Donald Trump is like, no, you're super smart. I'm going to go with Mitch McConnell on this. Republicans are being very stupid. A government shutdown would not only be disastrous for them politically, it would be a disaster for the country. The furloughed workers, the delayed payments, people don't get money. It's a horrible situation for everyone. It's not a smart decision economically, but it's an even dumber decision politically to do it, first of all, ever. Second of all, right before an election. But that is what they're doing. And even if we avert this shutdown, which I do think will happen, 7 times. 7! Since January of 2023, when Republicans took over that House of Representatives, they have pushed us to the brink 7 times. They can't do their jobs. Instead of working on actual legislation that's pretty important, like funding the government, what have they wasted their time doing? Well, investigating Hunter Biden, we've got to get to the bottom of that. Oh, we're going to impeach Joe Biden, and then they finish that and they don't impeach anybody. Now they're investigating Tim Walz because they think he may have secretly been groomed by China because he took a trip there in the 1980s as an exchange teacher. That's what they're doing. They can't fund the government, but by God, they will investigate every conspiracy theory that they come across on the internet. We got to take another quick break. I'll be right back with more of The David Pakman Show.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show.
We're back on The David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire and Farron Balanced, sitting in for David today. Let's get to some bad news, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about things that are ridiculous. Now it's time to come back to reality for just a moment. For the last few weeks, basically ever since Kamala Harris came into the presidential race, Democrats have been enjoying a steady string of almost 2 months of just really great news, right? We've had amazing polls. We've had record-breaking fundraising numbers. We had Kamala Harris decimate Donald Trump in that debate last week. I mean, the wind is at our backs. It's been sunshine and rainbows and happiness and energy, enthusiasm, and now one of the worst polls I think I've seen in a long time. And I take no joy in reporting on this other than this is a good motivator. So it is my job, unfortunately, to bring you the news, good news and bad, and this is a pretty bad one. A new poll from Gallup this week shows that Kamala Harris is 25 points underwater with her favorability ratings with independent voters. And yes, her favorable versus unfavorable with independent voters is worse than Donald Trump's. Let me read you these numbers. 44% of independents view Trump favorably and 53% view him unfavorably. So, okay, he's -9. 35% of independents view the vice president favorably, while 60% view her unfavorably, meaning that she is 25 points underwater with the key demographic. Now, that's bad. I don't want to sound like Donald Trump and be like, nope, fake poll. It's a real poll. It's a real poll that only polled 1,000 people. Okay, so, there is that. We're a country of 333 million people. You spoke to 1,000 of them, and you've come to these conclusions. Mathematically, I understand it. As a political science degree holder, I also took classes in polling. And granted, you're Gallup, you're national polling, far be it for me to tell you how to do your job, but you know that such a small sample size is not representative of the country. So, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, but I do think we need to take the poll at face value, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say, nope, it's totally an outlier, disregard it, everything's great. I don't want to do that. In fact, if anything, I almost wish these numbers were a little worse right now. And let me tell you why. As I started saying, we've had 2 months of great news. But every now and then we need a reality check. Every now and then you got to get that kick in the teeth. You got to be pushed down to get back up. And that's where we are right now. And that's how this entire race should be running. And to their credit, the Harris campaign has made it clear, we don't care what the polls say. We're going to run like we're 10 points behind. And that is the best strategy. And that's what everybody out there that supports Kamala Harris and Tim Walz also needs to act like. They don't need to have this, cocky, we're totally going to do this. They need to think, we're behind, we have to get ahead. We have to get new people. We have to educate people that are on the fence. We have to convince them to come over to our side. So that's what this poll is. We shouldn't look at it as bad news. We shouldn't look at it as devastating. And we sure as heck should not look at it as, oh my God, the sky is falling. This is a motivation point. That's how we view this. It means we've got a lot of work to do and not a lot of time to do it, but the work is doable. That's what David does every day with this show. That's what I do with my shows. That's what everybody else that does this is doing. And we need more of it. We need people out there getting the word out. That's what this poll is telling us. And the poll actually does have a bit of a bright spot. Because in terms of running mates, that's where things shift a little differently. J.D. Vance, of course, is 11 points underwater with his favorability rating, 36% favorable to 47% unfavorable, whereas Tim Walz is the only one out of Trump, Harris, and Vance that's actually a net positive. 41% view him positively and 40% view him negatively. Now, you can do the quick math on that. That only adds up to 81%. 19% of the country is like, I still don't know him. That'll change after the vice presidential debate, assuming J.D. Vance does not back out of it. But, you take a silver lining where you can. Tim Walz, right now, out of the 4 people running for president and vice president, is the most popular one. But it's not all bad polling news for Kamala Harris. We do have some other good ones, because along the same time that the Reuters, or Gallup poll, came out, we also had polling come out from Quinnipiac that showed that Harris is actually doing pretty darn good. In Pennsylvania, she has a 6-point lead over Donald Trump. In Michigan, a 5-point lead, and in Wisconsin, a 1-point lead. She is also, in those swing states, closing the gap with Donald Trump on the issues. On the economy, in Pennsylvania, 50% prefer Trump, 48% prefer Harris. Michigan, 50% for Trump, 48% Harris. Wisconsin, 51% for Trump, 47% for Harris. Those numbers were a lot different just a few weeks ago. She's closing the gaps, and that's great. Immigration, same thing. Pennsylvania, 50 for Trump, 46 Harris. Michigan, 49 Trump, 48 Harris. Wisconsin, 52 Trump, 45 Harris. Preserving democracy, however, that's where things definitely shift in Harris's favor. Pennsylvania, 45% say Trump will preserve democracy, 52% say Harris will. Michigan, 45 Trump, 51 Harris. Wisconsin, 47 Trump, 50 Harris. And a very important one here, if there is a crisis that put the country at great risk, who would handle it better? Pennsylvania, 47% said Trump, 49% said Harris. Michigan, 47% said Trump, 51% said Harris. And in Wisconsin, 48% said Trump and 49% said Harris would handle a crisis better. So you take the good with the bad. But all this tells us is that we got to keep working. Nobody can get complacent. And to be honest, I don't think people have gotten complacent, okay? I'm not accusing anybody of kicking back, putting their feet up on the desk and saying, no, we got this, everybody stay home. No, I haven't seen people doing that. I have seen energy. I have seen enthusiasm. I have felt those things for the first time in a long time as well. So I don't look at these, the favorability with independents. I don't look at it as a problem right now. I look at it as a very good motivator, showing us that we have a lot more work to do. And again, we don't have a heck of a lot of time to do it. But it can be done, and we're on the right path to making it happen. It is unfortunate, honestly, that we're not going to have a second presidential debate. Harris obviously got a big bump from that one. Her numbers on the economy, numbers on immigration, numbers on everything went up as a result of that. And that, of course, is why Donald Trump has backed out of it. He sees what a big boom that was for Harris, and he doesn't want that to happen again. He would rather take the L than have to go out there and take a very public L by not getting on stage with her. All we have is that vice presidential debate. And we're not going to have probably 67 million people watching that like we did the presidential debate, but hopefully it does generate a lot of views. Hopefully Tim Walz does as well as Harris did. Hopefully J.D. Vance does as poorly as Donald Trump did. And hopefully Walz can focus on the issues, right? That's what needs to happen here. Everybody knows how horrible J.D. Vance is. No need to, unless you could do like Kamala and really just trap him in himself, I'm okay with that. But if Walz can focus on the issues, we can see those numbers for the Harris campaign continue to go up. There is another poll, though. This one, not about Harris. This one showing us how gullible Donald Trump supporters are. According to a new poll released this week from YouGov, Trump supporters will apparently believe anything. And I do mean anything. For years now, Donald Trump has been spreading conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. The most recent one, of course, well, actually, it's not even the most recent one, but one of the most recent ones, of course, is this horrible conspiracy theory that has completely terrorized the town of Springfield, Ohio, that the Haitian migrants are eating the pets. A story that has been repeatedly debunked. The woman who originally posted it on Facebook has deleted it, and she said, oh my God, I can't believe this happened because of my post. Well, that's what happens. Be careful what you post. Maybe think twice before spreading unfounded rumors that you heard from a friend who heard from another friend who heard from a friend's daughter that this may have happened. Which, by the way, that is the chain of events that took place before the woman posted this. It was fourth-hand knowledge. But nevertheless, it is one of the most recent conspiracy theories Donald Trump has pushed, but it's not the only one. Here is what this poll found. Again, this is from YouGov, about what Donald Trump's own base believes that he, of course, is selling to them. A majority, 52% of Trump supporters, say they believe the claim about Haitian migrants abducting and eating pet cats and dogs. 52% of Trump supporters believe that. Media outlets all over this country have debunked it time and time and time again in just, the last week and a half. But a majority of Trump supporters still say, nope, it's happening. I don't know how you rationalize with people like this. People who can objectively look at a reality and say, nope, I believe the fantasy. That's just crazy to me. It is absolutely mind-blowing that so many people are willing to do that. It gets worse. 43% of Trump supporters say they believe that in some states it is legal to kill a baby after birth. 43% believe that we've got states out there, parents having babies, and then they're like, you know what? Nah, let's just, 43% of Trump supporters believe that is happening in this country right now. Crazy. 28% say they believe that public schools are providing students with sex change operations. 28% of Trump supporters think that public schools, who can't even afford to give supplies to their teachers, somehow have operating theaters and surgeons on staff at our underfunded public schools that are randomly pulling kids out of classes and say, hey, you, kind of like the Hunger Games. Like, you're today's tribute. Come on, we're gonna change. Like, oh my God, 28% of them believe that. God almighty, it gets worse. It gets worse. 81% of Trump supporters, 81%, say they believe Venezuela is deliberately sending people from prisons and mental institutions to the United States. Which, of course, there is no evidence for that at all. And it keeps going. 77% say they believe that the United States has given more aid to Ukraine than all of Europe combined. False. 70% say they believe millions of undocumented immigrants are arriving every month, which of course is false. Millions every month. Are these Trump supporters, by the way, they go about their daily lives every day not even realizing they never see immigrants. Most of them don't even see these people, but they think millions are coming through every month, and 20 million, 30 million, 40 million have come through in the last few years. Don't you think you'd see them somewhere? Maybe. God. 70% say they believe inflation is at its highest rate ever, which is not true today or at any point in recent years. Most Republicans, because it gets worse, most Republicans have told pollsters that Trump didn't try to overturn the 2020 election, that Trump didn't have classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and that Trump's offices were wiretapped during the 2016 election. And of course, there is the 2020 stolen election claim that as many as 2/3 of Republicans have believed. This might be the most gullible group of people on the planet. If Trump says it, they believe it. Now, sometimes not a majority of them, but like the lowest number he had was only 28% of people believe the sex change story. But this man has completely broken the brains of millions of people in this country. They're no longer capable of rational thought. They're no longer capable of distinguishing fantasy from reality. And that represents a major mental health crisis here in the United States. I'm going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok.
We're back on the David Pakman Show. I am Farron Cousins. I have been sitting in for David all day. And I'd like to remind everybody one more time, if you have enjoyed what I've had to say, and to be honest, even if you haven't, I still think you should go subscribe to my YouTube channels, youtube.com/TheRingOfFire, youtube.com/FarronBalanced. And across all social media, I'm at Farron Balanced. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, whatever it is, at Farron Balanced will get you right to me. Now, let's keep going because there's a lot more that I want to talk about before we end today's show. First of all, on Wednesday, the House Homeland Security Committee held a hearing in which Santa Cruz County Sheriff David Hathaway had the opportunity to speak. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is, of course, a member, for some reason, of the House Homeland Security Committee, and they were talking about immigration. They were talking about the wall, and that is when Sheriff Hathaway decided to point out to Marjorie Taylor Greene that that border wall that Trump loves so much, that Greene and Republicans love so much, is actually pretty racist. Here's how that transpired. Hathaway said, "They're not coming as an invasion to import an army, to have a secret army embedded in the United States to attack America and attack American values. They're coming here to work. They're people of faith. If you add productivity to the economy, it makes the economy more productive and price inflation is reduced." Hathaway then said he didn't want to use the racism word, but argued that there was a xenophobic aspect to Republican policies, saying, quote, "There was never a proposal to build a wall on the northern border, on the Canadian border, so, there is this kind of racist component to it that we all kind of ignore, but it's there, smoldering in the background." Now, he makes a valid point. If we're going to talk about immigration and keeping people out, because, oh God, we just can't have any more people, we only built one wall. Well, we didn't even finish building the wall, and Mexico definitely didn't pay for it like Trump said they would. But we never even considered putting a wall up there by Canada, right? And I know that, a lot of people are going to say, but Farron, that's because there's not, caravans of people coming across the northern border. Well, let me tell you, fake person that I created in my head and am now arguing with, here's the difference. You see, your talking point that, well, there's not caravans. First of all, there's not caravans actually coming across the southern border either. We only hear the word caravan, like Donald Trump said it a couple days ago, when there's an election looming, or when there's something Republicans want to distract us from that they've done horribly. But we haven't heard the word caravan in quite some time, but there's an election coming up, so it's coming back. Either way, Donald Trump told us, while he was president, that he didn't want people from blank hole countries coming into the United States. So that talking point alone really crushes any "we're totally not racist" claims coming from the "we build the wall" crowd. Well, not the "we build the wall" crowd, that is a totally different story for a different day, but the build the wall crowd, right? Donald Trump admitted it. He has openly said he wants, people from whiter countries and, Europe, Northern Europe. So, pretty obvious what Donald Trump was doing when he started the whole build the wall thing. And this Sheriff Hathaway, is 100% correct about that. There are definitely racist undertones to the build the wall crowd and the wall itself. But as you can imagine, Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't like this. This really set her off, and she went absolutely ballistic on Sheriff Hathaway, who actually knows what he's talking about. And here is what Greene said. "I'd have you know, Sheriff, there are 77 major border walls around the world. 45 countries are planning and building more. Walls are not racist. Walls keep people safe, and this country is not safe. People are being murdered every day." And at that point, people in the hearing started to laugh, which only made her crazier. And she said, "That's not funny. Walls are not racist. It's not racist. And the American people have every right to be fed up, just like they are fed up and disgusted that our country is not keeping them safe. And guess what? They freaking pay for it." If you're talking about they freaking paid for the wall and Mexico did not, then you're absolutely right. But no, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go ahead and debunk you right now. There are not people being killed every single day in this country by illegal or undocumented immigrants. That's not happening. Statistics have proven that undocumented immigrants actually commit crimes at lower rates than citizens here in the United States. Why? Well, one, because maybe they're just not criminals. But two, it's not worth it. Why would you come into a country illegally, knowing that if you do the slightest thing, they're going to catch you and deport you? Or would you rather keep your nose clean, go about your business, find a job you can work, and make a little money, and help support the economy like Sheriff Hathaway was telling us here? These people are not coming in to build an army. They're not coming in as part of the Great Replacement. They're coming in because they want work. They're coming in because they need work. They need better conditions. They're fighting for their own safety. They don't want to commit crimes. They're leaving places from where they're trying to escape crimes. Our economy is dependent upon foreign workers, both documented and undocumented, coming into this country. And if you have a serious problem with that, you don't take it up with the people coming across the border. You take it up with the corporations that continue to abuse these workers. If you want to change immigration in the United States, you cannot change it. You cannot even address it until you address these corporations. You know, there was a story a couple years ago where you had, I believe it was a meat packing plant, I think in Mississippi. I'm pointing over there because where I'm sitting, that's where Mississippi is. A couple hundred illegal workers, undocumented immigrants, working at this meatpacking plant. The feds raided it, pulled everybody out, had them sitting on the ground in handcuffs, all of them there. Arrested all of them. What about the owners of the plant? What happened to them? Nothing. And that's what happens. The owners of the plant don't have to worry. Oh, they may get a fine, they may get a slap on the wrist, which of course is what happens in this case, but it's nothing compared to the profits they make off the backs of these people. And what are these individuals going to do if they get hurt on the job? What are they going to do if the employer pays them less than minimum wage? Who can they complain to because they're not even legally allowed to be here? They are being exploited by these corporations, both big and small. So if you want to actually address immigration in this country, you cannot do it without starting with these corporations. And by the way, if you were able to do that, suddenly they can't hire these workers. The economy in the United States goes to shambles. We have to have them. They are vital to us. And that's something, that is a concept that is out of the grasp of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And while we're on the subject of racist Republican policies, we got to talk about J.D. Vance. A story came out this week about J.D. Vance and how he had one of his old college professors scrub a blog post that he wrote many years ago where he had specifically called out Republican policies for being very racist. And back in 2016, he reached back out to this college professor who had him write the blog post as part of a project he was doing. And he said, "Hey, professor, could you delete this blog post because I'm kind of thinking about getting into Republican politics. So, you know, calling them all racists in an old blog post, probably not the best look for me." Let me read you this from the New Republic. In a blog post from 2012, J.D. Vance, then a law student at Yale, criticized the Republican Party for being, quote, openly hostile to non-whites and alienating blacks, Latinos, and the youth. 4 years later, he asked his former college professor to take down the post titled A Blueprint for the GOP. Brad Nelson, who taught Vance when he was an undergraduate at Ohio State University, had asked his former student to contribute to the blog he ran for the Center for World Conflict and Peace. During the 2016 presidential primary, Vance asked Nelson to delete the post so he could work in Republican politics, which Nelson did, according to CNN. But is anything ever really deleted from the internet? No, not really. There's always a way to find it. And find it they did using archive.org. Here is what part of it said. Think about it. We conservatives rightly mistrust the government to efficiently administer business loans and regulate our food supply, yet we allegedly believe that it can deport millions of unregistered aliens? The notion fails to pass the laugh test. The same can be said for too much of the party's platform. Speaking, of course, of the Republican Party's platform, which, as Vance says, does not pass the laugh test. So here we have, once again, J.D. Vance saying things that were true, and now he's got to backtrack, or at least in 2016 he had to backtrack and say, hey, I think I can run for office as one of these folks. I think I can do this. I can make this happen. But you got to get rid of this. And the professor did his due diligence, right? He thought he was getting rid of it. But again, it lives forever. Now, granted, this isn't one of the worst, former J.D. Vance things that has come out. In fact, of all of the horrible things J.D. Vance has said in the past, this actually isn't one of them. This was one of the few times where he was correct about something and wanted that deleted. You should have gone back and asked for all those old podcasts to be deleted where you said that it was the, job of the postmenopausal women to help raise the grandchildren. That you should have asked to be deleted. Your comments about childless cat ladies, you should have asked for that to be deleted. But no, you chose to have the one correct thing you've ever said stricken from the record. And now it's back out there, so make of that what you will. And finally today, Republicans in the Senate starting to freak out a little bit. At a Republican caucus meeting this week, actually it was their little weekly lunch, Senate Republicans kind of started to sound the alarm about the fact that we don't have enough money to win very winnable races this year. Let me read you this report. The Washington Post is reporting that a party cash crunch among the Democrats is among the Republicans is happening while Democrats are out spending them with millions in the bank. Republicans feel like they will still take over the chamber, but not in the numbers that they had hoped for, and at a meeting this past week, they were given the bad news. At the Tuesday lunch, NRSC, National Republican Senatorial Committee leadership, told Senate Republicans they could lose winnable races due to a lack of funding as their candidates face a barrage of negative advertising. According to National Republican Senatorial Committee Executive Director Jason Thielman, quote, "We are on track to flip the Senate, but Senate Democrats' massive cash advantage is a real problem. The biggest thing preventing Senate Republicans from having a great night in November is the cash crunch we currently face." NRSC Chairman Senator Steve Daines added, "I'm concerned about the financial gap." So, Senate Republicans are running out of money. Where's all your money? By the way, speaking of where's all your money, I know Steve Daines is now in charge of the NRSC, but before Steve Daines took that over, it was being run by Rick Scott. And if you'll remember, when Florida Senator Rick Scott was running the NRSC towards the 2022 election, questions started being raised about where'd all the money go? Like they knew they had like $75 million, and then next thing they know, tens of millions are gone? Do y'all remember that story? A story that, by the way, we never got a resolution to. They just left it on a cliffhanger. Like, no, come on, come out with season 2. What did Rick Scott do with the money? I think everybody in this country, even non-Republicans, I think we deserve an answer to that. I think Rick Scott should still have to answer to that, because at the time he was just like, well, I don't know. Yeah, kind of seems important, especially now. But it is what it is, and to be honest, Republicans are right. There's a good chance they flip the Senate. Joe Manchin is not going to win his race. However, as they said, there are winnable races that they're probably not going to win because they got no money. Let me read you this. In Red, Ohio, where Trump has a 9 percentage point lead over Vice President Kamala Harris, Republican Bernie Moreno trailed Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown by 4 percentage points in an AARP poll. And in Nevada, Republican Sam Brown, a decorated military veteran, trailed first-term Senator Jackie Rosen by 14 percentage points in a Fox News poll, even as Trump was within 2 percentage points of Harris. So even the people that Donald Trump has endorsed in states where Trump is going to win, or is close to winning, they're losing. Like, he's winning by double digits, and they're losing. That's crazy. Not to mention the unfortunate polls for Ted Cruz that show Democratic challenger Colin Allred, some of the polls, not all of them, within the margin of error, creating a statistical tie. Not to mention the fact that also over here in Florida, Republican Senator Rick Scott is facing a very tough election race where he is virtually tied with his Democratic opponent. Now, I know Republicans think, oh, we can pick up enough seats to flip it because there's only, a couple we need, and they're definitely going to get Manchin's seat. But what if you lose 2 seats you already hold? See, you guys aren't factoring that in. You think that just because Florida and Texas are red states, and they are, that you're going to hold those seats. But right now, it's not looking super great. Your candidates are still winning, but not by margins that should make you comfortable. And if you don't have any money left to help, run these races, November 5th, that could be a very unfortunate night all across the board for Republicans. That is all the time we've got for today. I've got a wonderful bonus show coming up for the members. And don't forget, if you have enjoyed me, my name is Farron Cousins. You can find me youtube.com/FarronBalanced. Also, the big one, youtube.com/The Ring of Fire. And I'm all over social media. On every platform, I'm at Farron Balanced. Thank you so much to David Pakman and producer Pat for giving me the opportunity today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. And I will talk to you the next time David gives me this opportunity.